see it. It's perfect. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're having a great conference. I know I am. I always learn so much from these conferences, and it kind of gets me away from the hustle and bustle of everyday life in the pharma industry, and so it's good to talk with my colleagues and everything and everything. So I'm excited to do this presentation with our panelist is Dr. Syed Saleem. He's a pharmacist in charge with Right Value Drug, and also Rick Meyer. He's the president of Superior Laboratory Services. Dr. Saleem, do you want to kind of give a little background of yourself?
Absolutely. Travis, thanks for having me, and welcome everybody who joined this class program. And again, I think we have a great seminar, or the virtual seminar, which is going on for good knowledge, sharing between the peers, and also a lot of things to learn and try to improve. So my name is Syed Saleem. I am a doctor of pharmacy and BA. I also have a few certifications like Six Sigma, project management, quality design, things of that sort, all again to improve the quality of the products and medications. I have a vast background. I've been in the compounding industry for about 20 years. I've been with the compounding industry pre-DQSA, through the DQSA, and post-DQSA, all the way through 503Bs. It's been a tremendous journey all throughout. I've seen good changes, improvements, and we're heading towards a lot of improvements towards the compounding industry and into the almost again to the manufacturing side, basically almost with the GMP and ICH guidelines being followed. With that, I would pass over to Travis again.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Rick, you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself too?
Sure. My name is Rick Meyer, and I am president of Superior Lab Service. We've been in business 24 years now. I've been in the certification, testing, and construction industry for 42 years. Tested over 70,000 hoods and 5,000 clean rooms, designed over 2,000 clean rooms. I'm a inspector for the Texas State Board of Pharmacy. I'm a voting member for the ISO 14644 committee for the USA. Subject matter expert for the FDA on compounding pharmacies, especially 503Bs and 503As. I've done pharmaceuticals, radiopharmaceuticals, animal facilities, the research facilities. Pretty much worked with Dr. DeBakey back when he was developing the artificial heart.
Oh, wow.
I've been at NASA when the Space Shuttle program was started and went all the way through till it ended, and now I've been doing some consulting with them on the new James Webb Space Telescope for contamination issues. My career is through everything, and now with the COVID, I've got 3 contracts right now to design and build as a consultant for the public health labs here in Texas, one in Dallas, one in Edinburgh, and one in Corpus Christi. So it's always something new, it's always something exciting, and I love this because every day it's a new challenge, and that's my forte, is try to fix problems. So that's me.
Thank you very much, Rick. And yeah, that sounds like a really interesting career. My name, again, I said Travis Leeah. I've been a pharmacist since 1991 and graduated from the University of Texas and College of Pharmacy. And I've done hospital, retail. I've even done certain types of consulting. Since Rick talked about NASA, I did ship consulting at one time, which was very interesting, learning the maritime laws. But also, I've been in compounding, specifically sterile compounding, some non-sterile compounding too, and formulation since 1999. And I've held various positions, PIC, Chief Operating Officer, Director, President, Owner, and CEO of Unique Pharmaceuticals, and also with QuVa Pharma. I'm Vice President of Clinical Services with QuVa Pharma. So I've definitely seen a lot of changes over the years, and it's been an exciting ride. I don't regret any of it. It's been a heck of a ride, and I always love talking about 503B outsourcing. So we're ready to get going here. Okay, go ahead and advance the slide. So, our learning objectives, let me see here, is to learn strategies for managing contradicting regulations within 503B outsourcing, examine certain challenges and contradictions and possible redundancies in state licensing. What kind of licenses do you need for 503B outsourcing? Wholesaler, manufacturer, miscellaneous license, outsourcing facility license. You know, what do the different states require? Analyze pharmacist oversight and supervision policies, and what does it mean from a state and federal perspective, and also navigating state fines for FDA 483 observations. And what we'll do in this presentation is we'll give definitely real life challenges that we have seen and ways that we have overcome some of these objectives. Some of these objectives look scary, but they're, you know, the reality too in this industry. So we'll start, you know, we'll go into those and start talking about each one. So go ahead and advance the slide. Okay, so 503B outsourcing facilities, just a little historical perspective. I'm sure everybody here knows intently what 503B outsourcing facilities are. Just a little history is Drug Quality and Security Act was signed into law back in November of 2013, which created the new section of 503B within the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. Under Section 503B, a compounding pharmacy can voluntarily register as an outsourcing facility with the FDA. The actual specific definition, which is very important from a statute standpoint, is a facility at one geographic location or address that is engaged in compounding of sterile drugs and has elected to register as an outsourcing facility with the FDA and complies with the requirements of Section 503B. Now, under Section 503B, you do have specific exemptions within 503B, and that's the actual 505 requirements, which is your drug approval requirements, and also your 502F1 requirements, which is specific labeling and direction information that needs to be provided with each product. But at the same time, every 503B outsourcing facility has to abide by good manufacturing practice requirements. Okay, go ahead and advance the slide. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Saleem to take over this slide, but we're going to all be talking about each of these issues within each slide. So go ahead, Dr. Saleem.
Thank you, Travis. So as we can see on the slide, this is a regulatory requirements in regards to the registrations and licensing. The first one is there are a few registrations we need to have to operate as a 503B facility. One of them is you need to register with the FDA by paying, I think the initial is $15,000. and then you register with the FDA with a CEDAR. And also you have to provide a list of compounded drugs for the past 6 months. And not only that, you also need to provide twice a year reporting, one in December and other one in June for the past 6 months. So there are, that is a FDA registration. Now there is we also need to have a DEA registration if we make any controlled substances. And there is a DEA manufacturer license you need to have. If you operate as a 503A and 503B, you need to have 2 separate licenses. So the 503A would have a regular a pharmacy DEA registration, whereas a 503B would have a DEA manufacturer license. The 503A license is typically good for 3 years, whereas the manufacturer license is good for 1 year, and you have to keep renewing every year. Just like the inspections, again, with the DEA, you have every almost 2 years inspection. DEA comes for one is when they come for inspection, basically look for the securities, and they look for the access controls, and basically making sure those controlled substances are kept safe and secure in the location, who has access, maintaining the records, vetting the employees prior to hire, and also monitoring, training, so on and so forth. So apart from that, we will have a DEA on-site audit for manufacturers. So basically when they come in, they look for the inventory versus the sales versus any of the destruction, etc. That is the DEA part in terms of registration and maintenance. The next one is the state licensing. As we know that we also need to register with a State Board of Pharmacies as a 503B. Again, as Travis pointed out earlier, some of the states do require special registrations, and some states are still considering. And also there are certain states where they have a MOU with FDA. So there are a mix of and specialized way you register and deal with licensing part in terms of the different states. I think one thing that's not on the slide is you also need to register with the Department of Home Health and Human Services as a manufacturer. That also comes in, and also they have their own inspectors coming in to look for the facility, and they also have their own parameters which they look for during the registration. If anybody wants to add anything more on this, please.
Well, I think I could add that on the DEA side, I've been a DEA manufacturer for about, I think, 15 years. Had quite a few DEA audits. If anybody goes the DEA manufacturer route, the best advice I can give you is just to have very good documentation. Document everything and where everything goes. If you can document really well and you have a good documentation system, i.e. like you need in GMPs, it will help so much with that DEA audit. Rick, did you have anything?
Well, I saw that somebody was asking about the Health and Human Services. How do you register with them? I'm not sure exactly on that, but I know that in Texas, the health department is over the Board of Pharmacy. It's under their purview, and the health department also licenses the 503B facilities in Texas. So you must register with them, and then they're going to inspect you even more. So you just got to look at it from each of wherever you're at. The states vary so dramatically among themselves that there's no way to know without going in and just digging into it and asking. I've always found that if you ask, that they like that. The Board of Pharmacy.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it's different for every state, and it changes. It's still changing. It's changed a lot, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But it's changed a lot from state
somebody
to
else
state.
pointed out,
Yeah.
though, that it is a state requirement, not a federal Department of Health. It's the state departments of health that do that.
Absolutely. Yes, it is a state requirement. Yep.
And just to add to the DEA registration, we also need to submit something called an AR cost report. That is, again, as for any of the narcotics substances just used. So it has a requirement for reporting to an agency called ARCOS, ARCOS. That is, again, it is quarterly reporting you need to do for the amount of products produced and distributed or dispensed. And apart from that, you also, if you're manufacturing any of this controlled C2s medication, C1, C2, of course not C1, but C2s, you also need to have something called a quota limitation, and you need to request the DEA for the quota. And the quota, basically, you need to request them what is your expected product output, or how much you're intending to produce for the year. And also you need to give an estimate of how much the inventory will be left. So just to add that.
All right. Perfect. Thank you. Can we go to the next slide?
Sure. State.
All right.
Go ahead, Travis.
Oh, no. Go ahead, Dr. Saleem.
Sure, thanks.
Yeah.
So state requirements with the 503B timeline. So over the 5 years ago, most of the states required a retail pharmacy license for 503B outsourcing facilities. And then among that is presented with challenges with the pharmacy business model versus the GMP business model. This is one of the very critical and main area where every 503B is struggling with to change the mentality of traditional 503A pharmacy business model, moving into a GMP business model. Again, there's a lot of understanding, and since the 503B is in the middle of neither the 503A nor a full GMP, there's some fluidity in there. So there is some kind of a confusion, and people have challenges in overcoming some of those regulatory requirements. Again, FDA has given guidance multiple times since the beginning in 2013, and it is still in the process. It is evolving slowly but surely. I do remember attending some of the CDER meetings in Maryland when the 503B just enacted, and there were so many questions. I personally went, and I was sitting in a panel of CDER, and everybody was asking, like, please give us some clarity on how we want to proceed. So there is the challenges, and hopefully, but surely, we will probably be getting more clarity and moving towards some sort of a finalizing of the guidance documents sometime soon in the future. The next, going to the interpretation of the compounding requirements with respect to the pharmacy technician versus GMP oversight process with quality or engineering teams. Again, I know that the CGMP does not require a pharmacy technicians to be registered with the board, but in states, they do require you to have technicians to be registered, the persons who are working 503B. Again, since 503B is part pharmacy, part manufacturing, so we, at this point, need to fulfill both of the regulatory requirements. If we talk to the, TSBP, stable of pharmacies, they say, hey, you need to maintain that ratio, pharmacist to technician ratio, and also follow the GMP side, training them as needed for the job, not only having the pharmacy technician license sufficient enough for them to work anywhere. Again, job-specific training is very important. Just like we discussed, I think the 503B is still an evolving field, and we need to maneuver so many different things. to comply with regulations at the same time, overcoming the challenges we have. The next one is entering into the clean rooms unqualified. I know there are many 503Bs have a qualifying process for their personnel to enter the clean rooms. I think some facilities do have a qualification process in which they are done the donning tests or fingertip glove tests of that nature, and they do prohibit other than qualified personnel to go into the clean rooms, unlike the pharmacy side where typically in the past anybody with a regulatory requirement would probably be going in. But whereas the CGMP, they want to qualify those personnel who wants to go into the clean rooms. And that process typically takes anywhere between 3 to 5 days, because you need to, once you do the contact plate, collecting the samples, and then you need to incubate them and making sure that the person is well qualified or gowned up or with the proper PPE, and to get into the clean rooms. That way they're not contaminating the clean rooms once they enter.
Dr. Saleem?
Sure.
I was going to ask you, have you had, and this is, I've seen this before as an issue when, you know, if you're inspected by a state board of pharmacy or, you know, inspector, wanting to go into the clean room and when they're not qualified. I know I've had that issue before. Have you seen that before? Or Rick, have you seen that before out there?
So
I've never seen the question, but I heard you talk about it the other day.
Yeah.
So it basically falls back to your policy and procedures. So if you have your SOPs saying that anybody entering the clean rooms should be qualified, so then it falls back to your SOPs that you show it to the authorities. And again, I think the clean room designs these days is built such a way that you have clear panels where you can observe the people from across the rooms. There are clear panels where you can see the observation. I think most of the times the inspectors are okay with that. Yeah.
Okay.
What about if it was an FDA inspector? Do you require them to be also to go in?
If the policy, if your SOP says that's what it is, so you can tell them this is our policy. So, but you're more than to see or observe. Again, as long as you're not, they're able to observe anything what is needed, either via through a clear glass or through cameras. But most of the facilities now are built with clear panels, so you can see across the activities.
My suggestion is just, you know, don't break procedure, you know, for anything, and just go by that. We haven't seen that. I haven't seen that as an issue with FDA, just with some state boards, and also with the technician, the pharmacist ratio. I've seen differing requirements from different states on how they want to govern that, and that's always been a tough one to manage through too.
I find it difficult when you have the state and the feds and they're in contradiction. And I've argued this point with USP, and I've argued the point with the pharmacy boards, and I've voiced my opinions with them and said, you know, you guys all need to get on the same page so that we don't have conflicts. You know, one of my clients had all three of them, the FDA, the DEA, and the pharmacy board in there at one time, and the pharmacy board wanted this and the feds wanted that. And in the end, the feds won the argument, which they should have in a 503B. So,
right.
My opinion anyway.
And then I just got a comment from Melissa, and she says she's had it with FDA. They wanted her to write a deviation, so I guess the FDA person did not have to take off her nail polish. So they wanted a deviation. I haven't heard that one. That's a good one though, Melissa. But yeah, I would say just follow procedure. What about the pharmacist supervision and oversight requirements? I know there's been different interpretations of this one too, within the industry, and FDA has, it's in the statute. There's a few sentences about it in the statute, but the FDA has not written a guidance or has not written any rules about what it means from pharmacist supervision. And we do see variability from state to state with that. Dr. Saleem or Rick, any thoughts on that one?
Well, I know that us as an inspection for the state of Texas, they require us to do certain things, and one of them is go into the clean room. And so I'm looking at Adrian, and she said that the FDA inspector wouldn't take no for an answer with regard to going into the clean room. But what's funny is now Texas is doing virtual inspections, so we don't even see the facility. They're passing them. So it's kind of nuts that one year you can't do it, the next year you can. And I think this is all a little gone way beyond what it needs to go beyond. If you will just wash your hands and take your vitamin and your zinc, you'll be in good shape. You don't have to worry about COVID.
No, I think that's correct. As I think when the regulatory authorities are there, it's not good for us to argue with them if they insist to go. I think we accommodate them. And again, if you want to do any kind of a deep cleaning after that, and then that sort of things, just so your quality is maintained. So again, as said, the deviation can be returned for that, and business as usual after they left and cleaning has been done to the satisfactory level.
Well, with my company, we do testing and certification, and our people are given their own scrubs, and they keep them in plastic Ziploc bags to take to the facilities. But there's a couple facilities that won't let us wear our scrubs. We got to put on their scrubs, and so that's quite all right with us. I agree with that, but I've also
seen good policy.
I've also seen where the scrubs were contaminated when they put them on by sitting down on the same chair that they wore their street clothes in, to sit back down on to put the scrubs on and sit back down, put their shoes on, and then they transferred. So there's good and bad and everything. So
have you seen a big, I think this used to be a big issue that's not anymore, is the 797 versus 503B GMPs. I'm seeing the states catching up really on the 503B GMP side. What have y'all seen?
I think the states do sometimes fall back on the 797 requirements. They do understand GMP, but when a 503B facility is also licensed with the State Board of Pharmacy, they have every right to inspect according to their specifications. So that is, again, I think it's a bit of a challenging area for us to meet both the requirements, especially if you have the license, the board license as well as the 503B. It is a little challenging.
Yeah, as we've talked, there are different business models for sure. Go ahead, Rick.
In Texas, they actually had me train their 503B inspectors for the Department of Health. But it's strange that the pharmacy boards really doesn't go into the 503Bs anymore. They are now pushing it to the health department to go into the 503Bs. Is what I've been told by the Department of Pharmacy in Texas. But since I'm an out-of-state pharmacy inspection firm for Texas, My people are required to go into 503Bs. So it's kind of,
Right.
if they're out of state, I got to inspect the 503Bs.
Mm-hmm.
In the state, they're not inspecting the 503Bs. They really need to get some consistency is all I see, you know?
Yeah. Yep. I understand for sure. Go ahead, Dr. Saleem. You want to finish up this slide and we'll go on to the next one?
Sure. I think we touched the part where the pharmacist direct supervision oversight requirements. So that is, again, it's something which we doesn't have clarity, but for now, the 503B does require a pharmacist oversight, though it doesn't specifically say to what extent, and doesn't give you the minute details about it. But critically, I think for every critical steps, a pharmacist oversight is required at this point, including especially for the clinical part, where in which if you have a dosage requirements, pediatric or geriatric or any of those things, I think that's probably what it meant. But again, pharmacist supervision to what extent? Yeah, that is not fully.
Yeah. And we'll be talking about that shortly in the slide. If we could go to the next slide. There it is. So we can, pharmacy supervision and technicians, which I still see a lot of confusion with these. But Dr. Saleem, do you have any thoughts on these or any additional ones that we haven't talked about so far?
I think again, the pharmacist supervision pretty much. I think what the intent was to carry some of the good things about the pharmacy aspect, 503As, and also put into the manufacturing side. So again, just since 503B is in between, we are a mix of both. And it's like a fluid situation, and you're trying to get the best out of both sides. One is to have the pharmacist supervision because of the obvious the pharmacist's credential of knowing the drugs more and the clinical aspects of it, and also since I think because and a generic drug manufacturer it's mainly GMP. And they don't have to meet standards like labeling and other requirements. Whereas the 503B, we do have some requirements that we only have to cater to the needs of the hospitals and the clinics and any of the clinical needs, basically. So for that reason, the pharmacist involvement is more in 503Bs compared to the full generic manufacturer or pharma. I think that's probably the intent, and again, it's something which the clarity still needs to be established at some point.
Yeah, I think the intent too. I mean, I think you're probably saying the same thing too. Is within the manufacturing realm, since 503B is not quite 211, but it's a GMP all on its own, but the pharmacist oversight, I see, really injects that clinical aspect. You've got quality, you've got engineering, you've got operations, manufacturing, and then with the pharmacist oversight, you also have that clinical effect. If you're going to change this part of the process, what kind of patient impact are you going to have? How's it going to affect the patient? You're changing forms of a salt or, I don't know, a diluent. How's that going to, from a clinical standpoint, what's that going to do with the patient? And I see where the pharmacist within the 503B operations is so needed in that aspect for sure.
Just to touch on the same point, I think that earlier, I think mostly the 503As, your product labeling was milligrams per ml. but in 503B is encouraged to have milligrams per the container per package. So.
Oh yeah.
So.
Yeah, you're talking USP7 labeling, correct? Yep, very important.
I think what y'all are
Yeah.
talking about, the intent, is a very good point. I sat on the IEST working groups that write HEPA leak testing and facility design and all of this, and was the vice president of education for them. And when you sit around the table with 20 people and you're writing standards and recommended practices and, you know, all of this, you learn the verbiage they use for the intent they mean it to be used in. And that's things
Right.
that haven't said in those settings don't understand that intent. And it's about the intent of why they said it the way they said it. Sometimes you can't say you shall, you must say you should. And even though you really want to say you shall, you know, it comes out where you have to say you should. And so the intent was really to be you should, you shall, but you end up saying should. And I also feel that the hospitals are far behind a lot of the other facilities that I've seen.
Right.
A lot of them are catching up now, but they've been really far behind for a while. They don't tend to want to do what they should do. They spend all the money, but they never get to where they need to be.
What about pharmacy technicians? This goes back to the, you know, your ratios that are required from different states. Some states don't require a ratio. A lot of them do. How does it apply to 503B outsourcing? It depends on the state from my experience. We have found that if we use pharmacy technicians in our processes, they're usually since it's so many, since 503B is so manual, we have found that it's easier to train the pharmacy technicians, and they're usually more successful. But sometimes we can't get pharmacy technicians for all the different job positions, so we rely on industry techs and quality techs and people within engineering. Talk about that.
Yes. Again, since 503B is a fluid mix of both worlds, and that puts a little bit of a kind of a spot to hire, because if you talk to board of pharmacies, they say we held you accountable to the pharmacy board regulations, whereas the GMP does give you discretion as to hire qualified personnel. You basically hire a person, and then you qualify him doing on the job training, didactic, as well as for the training purposes. But if again, in a typical GMP world, you probably can hire non-certified pharmacy technicians, but in a 503B, that ratio or that had to be maintained. That is some sort of a.
Well, sometimes it depends on the states, because there's some states that have a strict if you're not, we're talking pure, if a 503B is dispensing, I think that's where the pharmacy technician comes in. But if they're doing non-patient specific manufacturing in the 503B, there are some states that are registered with the Department of Health of that state, and they don't have those same specific technician ratios. But then you go to the next state over and they'll have them. At least that's what I've seen.
And again, just like we were talking about earlier, every state has their own requirements. So it's challenging for as a 503B to operate in different states and going cross borders, following that particular regulations. And every time Either you need to reach out to me, or you do your best.
And I think these two issues are really challenging, even to this day still. Rick, were you going to say something?
Yeah, my recommendation to my clients when I'm doing work, because I've done work in Ohio and New Jersey and Florida and California and all over. And if they're going to be doing work in all of the states, go find the most stringent state and most stringent FDA guidelines, meet them, and then you meet everybody.
That's a really good answer there for sure.
And I tell people, because we have to be OSHA requirements do the same thing, because OSHA is the one that's actually implementing the USP 800, because they are actually citing people in Oregon, and a couple other states have been cited for it, the pharmacies. So.
Right. Okay, let's move on. I think we've made this point for sure. Let's go to the next slide.
Did you see
Rick? Did you want to take over on this slide here?
Yeah. Did you see the question from Amy? Which state?
Oh no, I did. I missed it.
On a 503B pharmacy tech ratio, assuming they're not dispensing. That was her question.
So are you talking about a state that requires the 503B ratio, or the pharmacist to tech ratio, or the one that doesn't?
She said the pharmacy that does.
Okay.
State that does.
Typically, I think that typically, again, I'm not, every state has different regulations, but your home states, where your pharmacy physically present, that's probably the state which wants you or requires you to have that ratio. So just to.
If you have a pharmacy license.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, any states come to mind for you, Rick, or?
I don't know any off the top of my head. Amy said she's in California, and California does not. So. Yeah,
California doesn't. No. At one time they did, but they don't now. I know in Texas, they still, if you're registered, you have to be registered with the Department of Health in Texas, but if you are registered with the pharmacy board, then they do require a ratio here.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, California is pretty tough. California has been really good, though, actually. I've liked the direction California has gone from a 503B standpoint, because it was really, really tough at the beginning of 503B with California. Really, really tough. And, now it's not nearly as bad.
Yeah, they reversed course.
Yeah.
That's what they did. they were tough.
Exactly.
I talked to a couple of their inspectors out there, and they were, and the next time I got through talking to them, and they were going, well, we're reviewing this. So
I think there was a question which says, what is the ratio in Texas? I think the ratio in Texas is 1 to 4. And also, Travis, there's a last point, which is a very important point in regards to the 503Bs. Where does the quality groups in GMP fall? So the quality groups in GMP, that is, it's a very critical component in GMP. And that's, I think, once you move from the pharmacy, that's 503A to 503B, the first thing what any agency is looking for is a quality group. Independent quality unit with a quality control, quality assurance. These are the very, very important part of GMP and the 503Bs. And whenever they inspect, any inspector expects every 503B to have an independent quality unit, which comprised of enough staff which would have a good QMS, that's quality management system, in place for document control, for change controls, for implementing the procedures contemporaneous. Again, the ALCOA, attributable, legible, contemporaneous, original, and
Right.
so all these quality attributes to be built into the GMP. That's one of the main and a major component of a 503B. As long as you have a strong quality group at your facility, and that's a good thing to have.
Yeah, and one of the reasons this note came under pharmacy technicians, I did have a pharmacy board, unnamed, several years ago that asked us if some of our quality folks were registered pharmacy technicians. And so we had to explain that they were microbiologists and different other types of subject matter experts that you have to have within GMP. But they did want some of our quality group folks that were in manufacturing to be pharmacy technicians. Now, I haven't seen that lately, but we have seen that before in the past. All right, next slide. All right, Rick.
Yeah. Okay. Using a Form 483 inspection report as a punitive measure of a violation. I haven't seen that a lot, but the state board, I've heard and talked to them about it in Texas, and they will want you to explain. But I don't know. Do you know, Travis, if anybody who's ever been actually sued by the state? I know one that was they brought measures against them.
No, but a lot of the states do follow, licensed 503B in outsourcing facilities within those states, and
Yes.
they do follow the 483 inspection reports. And we have a team that when we get a 483 in our facility, we have to, a lot of times we have to, send the responses and send our information, on the 483s to certain states. And sometimes the states, if they don't like the 483, they'll call you in for a hearing, and they'll go over it. And I've heard some states, will fine 503B outsourcing facilities on certain 483s. And I've read about that too. And there's a good number of states that have done that. I guess in this part, just, it's something else we have to manage from a 503B standpoint. I think this is one way that, the states look to get a good snapshot of the 503B outsourcing facilities and where they stand from a quality standpoint using the 483. We talked about this in an earlier presentation too.
Mm-hmm. I think the states also look at it. It does that 483 have something that violates the state's regulations? Because
Yes.
that 483 could be something that's only federal, and so the state. Even though they may talk about it, there's nothing they can cite you for because it's not a violation of state policy. So.
Right. Yeah, and that's a good point, Rick, too. A lot of times they do cite that it's in violation of their state requirements, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay. Well, that's what I was talking about there. And then FDA warning letters, which I guess when you're talking about that, that's whenever it comes beyond the 483 or you haven't answered it properly. I had a client that actually told them they didn't think they were right, told the FDA in the 483 response. And I said, that's the wrong way to respond to a 483.
Right.
The answer to a 483 is we recognize it and we're going to do our best to fix that, and here's the way we're going to fix it. And the next time you're going to see that it isn't going to happen again. And I think that's what the FDA wants, and that's the reason for that 483.
Right. And definitely, this part is you want to take your 483 serious, and you want to put a good, process improvement plan together to make sure that you do overcome from a holistic standpoint. Like if you just put a Band-Aid on it, like fix that one problem, but don't look at it from a holistic standpoint, then you'll get more communication from FDA. But just look at your 483s and come up with really good plans, corrective actions to make sure that you address the 483s in a holistic standpoint, so you could avoid those warning letters or drug recalls or any other kind of enforcement actions for sure. Adrian put here, our quality team aren't required to be techs, but I find them great. Absolutely agree with you, Adrian. We have a lot of pharmacy techs that have gone into our quality systems, and they know the drug in and out. So I totally agree with your comment there.
Well, I was going to say something. I forgot what I was going to say. Voluntary drug recalls. Who wants to talk on that one?
Recalls aren't anything it's any fun to go through, but I always take it back to the patient. If a product is out on the market and it's out being used by patients and it's not in the best interest for the patient, we want to be a solution and not a problem for our patients. And along with 483s and warning letters, voluntary drug recalls, you could learn a lot, and you can improve your company immensely by going through them. And I like having that as a process because like I said, to err is human. I mean, it just takes amount of time for one error to happen, and you want to be able to have a recourse so that that you can avoid patient harm, because it all goes back to the patient.
Well, I remember what I was going to say. Just for anybody that's on here, the FDA's got new training that's going to be coming out soon, and I highly recommend everybody go take those courses, because they cost you nothing except time.
And also,
and some of their training's been really good. Go ahead, Dr. Saleem.
And also the voluntary drug recalls. I mean, if you see by search, Googling, and that gives you a good learning thing. So what not to do.
Yes.
Right. And what you're doing. That's a good learning thing from those drug recalls.
I agree. Next.
It's a common, we've said it quite a bit, and you learn a lot from working with the FDA for sure.
Next slide.
All right, next slide.
Who's that? Is that yours, Travis?
Yeah, I could take this. Yeah, sure. Managing the regulations, and I've said this before, is just so important. The better work you do up front, the better the work you do up front, and the more you do before you get into production and into commercializing, the better. Make sure you get a good plan and process, and the right people in place that know the GMPs backwards and forwards in order to make sure you have everything in place. From my standpoint, I think that's so key, because once you're going at 60 miles an hour, or I guess in Texas here, we have speed limits of 75 and higher, 80. Once you're going that fast, it's hard to change it unless you bring it down. And I think that's really important just from the get-go, from the start, is to make sure you put quality as a priority in your company, and you have the leadership buy-in for sure, or it won't happen, and get those GMPs in place. Compliance with all FDA requirements. This is a daily thing that has to be ongoing in your system. You have to have good investigation groups, good investigation processes, because you're going to always have, out of specs. You're going to have deviations, and so you have to have a good process to fully investigate those and make the necessary changes and adjustments. And compliance on what and how to compound each drug. From a compliance standpoint, we've got a lot of commercial copy requirements. You've got the bulk list. You've got to follow those and keep that at the forefront. And when you do bring on new drugs, try to get all your answers answered, or your questions answered, or the issues answered in the front before ever going commercial with that product. Make sure that as you license in each state, you have to meet all the FDA requirements and the GMPs. I see those coming first and foremost. If there's a state or there are state regulations that contradict that, I always find it useful to call the state to get a meeting set up with them, or just to call them on the phone and talk to them. Face-to-face is best. In the COVID world, it may be on the phone, but definitely address it with them and ask them their suggestions. A lot of times the states will say, "Oh, we can't give advice," and all that, but it doesn't hurt to ask and interpret it to the best of your ability to make sure that the FDA GMPs are not sacrificed. Any other thoughts?
Nope.
I think you pretty much covered everything.
Rick?
No, I'm good.
All right. Next slide. We're at the end of our time. Just a couple of notes from defending state actions. If you have to work on that, make sure to always be progressive and look at your 483s from a holistic standpoint to make sure that if you see a 483 in one area, make sure that it can't be repeated in another one, and make sure to come up with responses or corrective actions to make sure that you can fully correct it. Always be transparent, direct, and honest with all the agencies. Honesty, you have to be honest with them. If you don't have an answer to something, just tell them, "I don't know, but I will find the answer for you." But the honesty is so important. And be ready to explain your responses and your rationale, and use as much scientific evidence as you can for your corrections. Even if you have to do extra tests or extra evaluations, extra risk assessments, make sure those are, going forward. And if you do have any state actions for 483 with the state, it's always good to be represented by counsel, just to have an ally there watching your back. because like I said, we're going to be honest and direct, and we'll need some counsel to help guide us in the way we need to go. And I think that's it. Next slide. Yep. Thank you all for coming into our presentation, and hope this helped. And do we have any other questions?
I don't see any.
Okay. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of the Pharma Salon programs, and we enjoyed being with you, and have a great day.